Good day, everyone. Today we have IKARUS talking about prison breaks. Enjoy.
Thank you. Hello and good morning to everyone. I'm happy to see so many faces despite yesterday's Rakia leaks. So let's go into it. My name is Gerhard. I go by IKARUS on conferences like this. I'm a pen tester. So I do security research, and I'm especially interested in embedded devices, wireless systems, and you might know me from maybe the MyFair Classic tool app. If you're interested in RFID hacking, I started that project when I was a student. What I wanted to do today is talking about kiosk mode environments, and for doing that we first have to have a quick definition what they are. Then what is this talk like? We will narrow down the scope, what is it about and what not. We will take a step back and try to figure out what interfaces, attack vectors there are. And then, this is the main portion of the talk, we will talk about tips, tricks, stories, demos. So what I wanted to do is basically just share a collection of things I came across and how to bypass them on kiosk systems with a kiosk mode environment. And then we will recap with the short lessons learned, and hopefully we have time for Q&A. And especially in this Q&A, you're very much welcome to share your own stories of how you broke out of a kiosk mode environment, or maybe just some tips and tricks I did not include in this talk. So what is a kiosk mode environment? I tried to somewhat define it. So mostly it's a system, a setup, a device, or it can be applications too, that are locked down to a specific functionality. So you should not be able to access the underlying operating system, for example. They are restricted, streamlined. Most of the time, a lot of the times it's just a web browser, a single application running in the foreground, and you should not be able to escape or modify the system underneath. And sometimes you find security measures to, well, prevent you from doing anything else. Maybe it's easier to go through some examples. So this could be kiosk mode systems. I'm pretty sure a lot of people you encounter devices like this. It's kind of a habit for hackers. Maybe it's a good time to ask if I am the only one, like, you know these systems and you can press different buttons. Who of you ever tried to, well, do things on that system that are not supposed to do? Can I get a shot? Oh yeah, it's like nearly half the room. Who did it twice at least? Okay, still a lot of people. Yeah, okay. And for some people it becomes a notorious behavior, like if you see a system like this, you have to press every button. But I want to open your eyes for different kiosk systems as well. So it's not only these terminals you find in the public, but also medical devices can be, or most of the time are, kiosk mode environments. You should be only able to configure the functions that you need on that. And in some cases, it's even not only security relevant, but also safety relevant. And you can find them basically everywhere, like photo printer station or just points of sales terminals. They have like a big touch screen, and you're not supposed to do anything to the underlying operating system. And let's be fair here, most of the time it's a Windows system. So some examples, even ATMs, visitor registration, self-ordering terminals. Maybe got to some McDonald's and there's a terminal there and you pressed every button. And yeah, it used to work to break out of this. I've seen your system, it wasn't that easy there. Maybe public transport, where you can just buy a ticket, or just info terminals at a museum or something like this. So what is it about? Like I said, it's just a collection. There is a possibility that there's nothing new within this talk. It's just I wanted to collect tips and tricks and things I learned in the past that hopefully can help other people to break out of the system and try to figure out if they are secured in a correct way. I will mainly focus on devices. So not like breaking out of a Citrix environment that is only supposed to run one application. And it's basically just sharing knowledge. And what it is not about, it will not be about privilege escalation attacks, because some of the times if you break out of a kiosk systems, you're not like an administrative user yet, so you might want to do some privilege escalation attack. I cannot include that here. It's just too many different topics to talk about. It comes down to system hardening. And from my experience, and a lot of times, scary a lot of times, when you break out, you already are like administrative user and can change everything about the system. And unfortunately, I cannot include pictures of devices I have tested for customers NDA. And unfortunately, I named it Prison Break, but I'm sorry, I didn't watch the show. I'm not sure if it's shame on me or how good the show is. I have to try it sometime. So my meme game with Prison Break memes will not be high in this presentation. Quickly, I want to acknowledge the work of previous work done in the field. So there had been, I'm not the first one talking about breaking out of kiosk mode environments. There had been especially like 3 or 4 talks, tool presentation by Paul Craig, and there had been a lot of other people trying to collect some tips and tricks and made basic cheat sheets, helpful application, something like this. So I'm not the first one looking into it. There are other resources you can check out. Okay, let's dive into the topic. And when we have a kiosk system in front of us, so the first step I do, or mostly try to do, is to abstract a little bit. Like, what do we actually have? So, like in every good pen test, probably you start with like an information gathering phase. So you try to figure out, okay, what is this device terminal? What does it do? What does it do? Are there different use cases? Because from the use cases, you get a better understanding what the system maybe is or can do. And what do you know about the platform? Especially if you know the operating system, that can be really helpful. Talking about keyboard shortcuts. If you know it's a Linux, there are quite different keyboard shortcuts when compared to a Windows system, for example. And you have to check out what input methods do you have. I mean, most of them have a touchscreen, sure, but some of them even have a keyboard. Some of them have a restricted keyboard. I have seen that a lot of times as well. So the security comes by, let's remove the Windows key. Nobody can press the Windows key, so there are no scary keyboard shortcuts anymore. Some manufacturers think probably. And there could be other input methods. So there could be barcode readers or something like this. And there could be completely different interfaces. So some of the devices have just a USB port. You can plug something in. Interesting. Maybe they have Ethernet and you can access the Ethernet easily. Maybe they're connected to a Wi-Fi where you are also connected in. Maybe there is even Bluetooth, something like this. So there can be lots of different interfaces. And the more you know about the device, the easier it gets to find out what ideas can help you breaking out of these environments. And of course, what else? Even like in some devices, of course, if you completely disassemble them, well, it's not really breaking out of a kiosk mode system then, but sometimes you can just one screw and behind that is a USB port. And sometimes it's just not only disassembling the device, but what else can we access? Sometimes it's even just the power cord. And that can be interesting because if we have access to the power cord, we can unplug the device and plug it in, and we can reboot it. And during reboot, a lot of interesting things could happen. So that is interesting as well. So what I tried to do for this talk and for write-up I did is to categorize all the different approaches. Maybe the categories are not the best, probably some are missing, but this was my first attempt to put them into different sections and to split the knowledge about different approaches that we can break out. And we will go through them step by step. And I wanted to show just some basic tricks, some things to look out for, and hopefully we will do some quick demos, something that you understand what the actual point of that is. It will possibly not be complete. It will very likely not be complete. I cannot talk about like every keyboard shortcut. I know that can be helpful. But I tried to do more documenting, and there's a GitHub repository. I will come to that later. Okay, let's start off with the Kiosk application itself, like the application running in the foreground that is restricting yourself. So the first basic thing to know is it probably has a breakout mechanism, because these systems have to be maintained in some form or another. So you have, probably there is some way to break out of this kiosk environment to maintain it. And a lot of the time it requires some form of authentication. In some other times I encountered it does not. It's just a hidden function. If you find it, you can just break out, and it is the intended way to do so. So basic tips and tricks to look out for it. Most of the, like, people think they're super clever, but it's always the same. Like, look out for static content. It's typically that, like, if you have a logo in the upper left corner, just press on it 10 times, or like press it like 10 seconds straight. It probably just pop up a menu to enter a pin or something like this. Or even it's the clock, so static, I mean, clock changes, but it is always there in the same corner. It's just some version number you see in some menu. Just press on that, as long, like, in many different ways. It could, like, break you out of the system, or it could ask for authentication to break you out. And also look for that authentication mechanism, because some of the times it's just default credentials. I mean, there is popping up a dialog asking for a PIN, but you can just 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're out. So try everything and do your research, because some of the systems have known pins that can be, for example, derived from a MAC address that you find on the network interface. So have a look at this. Some impression of that. That is Milos tweeted last year about this, going to BalCCon. So I'm not the only one, and as we established earlier, a lot of you have this habit as well, pressing everything. Milos apparently so too. So he found, I'm not sure, it's a vending machine from the first photo, and he found a menu, like you can see, to break out of the kiosk environment. I'm not sure if he was able to find the pin for that, or if he tried a lot of pins, but that is how it could look like. Another interesting story I wanted to share, like, even high security environments like ATMs, at least a lot of people think of ATMs as being super secure. Quick story I can share: I was at BalCCon in Australia, and I had the pleasure to spend some time in the city of Melbourne after that, and with another people that was native there, and he told, well, we talking about kiosk application at some point. They say, yeah, you know, like, you can break out of most ATM just by pressing this key combination. You go to a secret menu, and then you can change IP configuration of ATM. Like, no, you're totally bullshitting me. And he was grabbing me by the hand. We walked straight into the next bank. It was going to the ATM, press enter, cancel, enter, clear, cancel, like the 3 colored buttons. Then 1, 2, 3, and just a menu popped up. And some of the times you have to enter another PIN. Default is 5555 for most manufacturers. You just have to notice, because I thought, like, if somebody would have told me that, I wouldn't believe them. But we were in that back, and it did work. So unfortunately, like, go back, let's move, let's go out there. This was camera surveillance. Maybe not the best idea to do that in public. But you have to know, like, these basic breakout mechanisms, so, and do your research about them. And when we talk about kiosk applications in general, there are also ways to break out of them when you have, like, a general look at things. So if you find links can be really helpful. Links open browser. If you're in a browser context, they bring you to other interesting sites. Open safe functionality typically goes back to, let's say you want to open a file, you just use the Windows file open dialog. And if you do that, it is rather easy to break out from that. Or some embedded elements. Sometimes there's a browser within a native application, or there's a PDF viewer. PDF viewer, no, maybe the PDF viewer is just some basic embedded element in the application, but a PDF viewer, for example, most of the time knows the keyboard shortcut Control-P for printing. That could be helpful. So there are different ways to look at it. And to not make it that boring, I wanted to try some demos. Let's have a look if the demo gods are good here. So this is just a website in kiosk mode. The Edge browser from Windows actually comes with a kiosk mode, so I cannot right-click here. So this is a default functionality to make it harder. Let's just press some button on this website, and here's an interesting button for slides, and it will just PDF. And nowadays PDF are rendered in the browser, and we find something interesting like the save button here. And save button, then we are closer to the operating system. And if we are closer to that, of course, if we only have a touch screen, we have to like manually navigate to all the different, I mean, I will cheat here a little bit with a keyboard, but let me quickly check. So we want to go to system 32. If we only have a touch, screen, of course we want to show everything. We probably, to not scroll it all the time, the OSK application is in the system 32 as well. This is just your on-screen keyboard, so if you only have a touch screen, that helps, of course. Windows comes with it. Even if like you can probably right-click and open it from there instead of opening the file, or in this case, saving the PDF on the on-screen keyboard. If you cannot open with a right-click because it's like blocked or something, a neat trick is a drag and drop. Also interesting, a lot of people don't. If you drag and drop something over an executable, Windows tries to attempt to open that file with that executable. I mean, it cannot do it, but it will show the keyboard regardless. And from that, we can just go here, press CMD. A lot of people don't know it, but you can do that in that file here, and you have your shell, for example. So this is one of the creative ways to go out of kiosk mode from here. Let's go back to the slides. Going to the next topic, touchscreen, mouses. Just some general things to look out for here, from here as well. Like long touch on the most systems, that is somewhat similar to a right click, so the context menu. Context menus are really helpful. They can have a lot of things that help you break out. As we just saw, drag and drop, that can be super helpful. Even in some other windows, not like the open window. Maybe you know the file, like the folder browser dialog, that is also available as default in Windows. You cannot do as much from there, but you still can drag and drop folders. So that is copying, that can be overwriting files. If you copy a folder that is the same name on another folder, you can overwrite the files that are in the folder. That can really help from time to time. And of course, with touchscreen, most of the time there come gestures and different movements. So just try to go at the different corners of systems to find out if you can break out from there. And most of them are pretty much well documented, at least for Windows. You can just look up what different gestures they are. I mean, it's a little bit small, and it's not complete. Just go to the website and find it out yourself. But there are, for example, some gestures that if you swipe with 3 fingers from the top, it will show all open application. So that can help if you want to change the focus. And there are a lot of different ones that can help you. But don't take it from me. We will just look at another demo. I have, again, kindly provided by Milos. He's documenting his crimes very well. No, just kidding. So just have a quick look. It's really fast, so you see the system, and he just swipes from the ground. That's it. It can be that easy. So people, and this, like you see, this is like a public transport ticketing system, I think. And of course, there's the Explorer, and you can go from there. So people a lot of the times don't believe that it's that easy or that could be something like that. But it is. Even like on this PC, people do that. Like, is it like really running Explorer? Where's the taskbar? Just move the mouse to the lower corner and it shows up. Like people use this basic functionality to hide the taskbar and thinking nobody will ever find out. So go to the different corners and try. So now coming to a very important topic. It's the attack vector of keyboards, because keyboards, they have so many attack potential for kiosk systems, so we have to have a closer look at them. Some terminals might have a keyboard just built into it. I talked about that earlier. Maybe it does not have all the keys, but it can be still helpful. Or we can plug in our own keyboard via USB. That is really, really helpful in a lot of the times. Because there are so many different keyboard shortcuts that is really hard to write a good filtering rule that only allows the keys you want to do, like blacklisting all the keys, all the shortcuts you don't want to. To do that, you first have to know like every keyboard shortcut that can be dangerous for your kiosk mode environment. And just some basic example, of course, you know about this, like Control-Alt-Delete. It will go on a modern system on the overview window where you can find the task manager, or you can run the task manager just straight by pressing Control-Shift-Escape. There's Windows X, Windows R, Windows E. Maybe changing the focus with Alt-Tab, you know, but you can do it also with Alt-Escape. You can do it with Windows Tab. So there are many, many different options. This is by far not a complete. This is just some examples. There are so many keyboard shortcuts that can help you break out. So it's really, really, really hard to find them all. And we will have a closer look at some less well-known in a second in a demo. And another interesting thing I wanted to include is the point at the very bottom. Some people are, do stateful keyboard shortcuts. That can be really, really annoying. I don't know a really good way to find them yet. If you have a good idea, please come and talk to me. But what I mean by that, I've come across kiosk systems that had a stateful breakout, but it's really hard to guess the state from a black box. So on this particular, it was a medical device. I could press Control-Alt, and it was some letter, I don't remember the one, and nothing happened. But it was important to press that first, but after you pressed that, other keyboard shortcuts started to work. But if you don't know that, it's really hard to find. And of course, you can automate like a keyboard that is pressing every key on the keyboard, but that is not really fast, and you have to sit in front of the device to monitor what's happening. That is not really good feasible. But you have to know that some people do that, like stateful keyboard shortcuts, and also some of them do custom keyboard shortcuts. You try all the Windows keyboard combinations, but breaking out of the kiosk environment might be as simple as pressing the number 4, and you just never try to press just the simple 4 on that, because they mapped it to a breakout function. I saw that as well. So we will some demos again, maybe to make it a little bit more entertaining, with some lesser known keyboard shortcuts. And when we are on a Windows system, I will not run any application. It doesn't have to be. I mean, a lot of, I think, gamers know these keyboard combination because it happens by accident. A lot of time it's enabled these sticky key functions. So if you press hammer on the shift key, not keyboard combination, nothing like this. So people very often they miss this one because it's not a keyboard shortcut. It's just a shift key. And you just have to press it 5 times quickly. And the nice thing about that, it comes with a link. And like I said, links are dangerous. And if we press on the link, we're just going straight to the settings. And of course, we can break out from there. For example, we can find in keyboard shortcuts again. Then we have a browser. On the browser, we can, for example, go to downloads. And from the downloads, we can open the downloads folder. And then we have our way back in. So that is something we can do in that regard. A lot of Windows. And another one, like they are really obscure keyboard combinations that a lot of people don't know. At least I did not know for a long time. You can press Shift, Alt, and the print screen, and it will also open a weird dialog. It also works like Shift, Alt, and numlock. Also can be interesting because if you press Shift Alt Numlock, it offers your functionality to use the num block as a mouse. So if you don't have a mouse, you can actually use it as a mouse. But again, this comes with a settings menu. This time it's a different one. It's even easier from this one because this one, like right in the top, also accepts commands. So we can go from there pretty easy. There are a lot more different, not well-known shortcuts, and some of them are specific to products, but some of the products are installed in a lot of systems. Just to make an example, would be Control, Alt, and F12. On older systems, that opens the menu for the HD graphics driver from Intel CPUs. So if you have like a GPU inside your Intel CPU, and a lot of these kiosk systems don't have an extra GPU, so they use this one, and the graphics settings menu, you can start from there. Continuing to rebooting, to booting, to login screens, I put them all in somewhat the same category because they somewhat more or less lead to the same outcome. So rebooting can be really, really interesting because when you are able to reboot the system, you might be able to access the BIOS, the UEFI. And if you're in the UEFI, maybe you can do a lot of things. Maybe it's password protected. On some of the systems I saw, it is password protected. Some of the systems have a password protected UEFI, but if you just press enter, you get a read-only mode for the UEFI, and you can just look at settings. But you can, in most cases, always change the time. That can be, in some cases, helpful as well. Just a small story from a colleague of mine. He was like in a somewhat Kiosk environment that was tied to a Firefox. And he just got into the BIOS, increased the year by 1, then started the system again. And what Firefox does is looks up the files and says, oh, they hadn't been changed for a year by now. And it will show a pop-up, this Firefox hasn't been used for a year. Do you want to reset every settings that is done in the profiles? And you can just press yes and go from there. So that can be helpful in some cases. Or maybe you can change the boot order. Or maybe you cannot access the BIOS, but you can access the boot order menu because they're two different menus in a lot of different systems at least. Maybe you have the built-in EFI shell where you can change some things about the systems or even read data if they're not BitLocker encrypted. Some EFI systems have a built-in EFI shell that has an NTFS driver and you just can read out data. And of course it might allow you to boot from a different medium. That can be super helpful. If you can boot from a USB flash drive, your Linux, you can change everything about the system. You can create your own Windows account and next time the system starts, you can break out of the Kiosk environment pretty easily. And sometimes with rebooting, there come short time frames, like short race conditions where you can do stuff that you're not supposed to do. So a lot of the system, when they start, they're using some batch scripts or something like this to start other applications. And for a short time, you can see some CMD window. Maybe you can do something from there or even other circumstances. It highly depends on how the system is built, but in the booting time, you can probably do other things. And also when it comes to especially login screens, you might be able to access also other options by rebooting and rebooting into the repair and boot options menu of Windows. But to make that a little bit more clear, we will have a look at demos again. So what we will do for do here, the sticky keys feature that let us break out last time by pressing 5 times Shift, I will just disable it. So I can, like, you don't see it, but I can press Shift as many times as I want. It will not work anymore. But a thing that a lot of people don't know is that this setting is user specific. So like I said, rebooting could be an attack vector. And if we reboot the system, it will automatically log into the system, start the kiosk mode environment as well. But what I can do, hopefully it will work. Sorry, the PC is not the fastest. I will just, during boot, hammer Shift as fast as I can. Because when we are logging into the system, we are not any user yet. Did you see that for a split second? The dialog was still there, although we deactivated it. This works like really, really good on a lot of systems. So what I just did, hammered the Shift, and of course there was no link there, because before login there is no way to go to the settings, but still I can, why is it hanging? Oh, I'm sorry. That's a little bit anticlimactic. It should be automatically logging in. Not sure if it froze or something. Oh man, that's the thing with already hacked it. No, it actually should automatically log in because that is what I configured it to do. But let's hope that it still works. And when it logged in, the sticky keys functioned. What I did, I was pressing Shift many times, and then I pressed Enter very fast because yes is the default answer in that dialog. And sticky key itself can like help a lot of times to bypassing keyboard filters. But because the functionality of sticky keys is a perfect function to bypass filter, what it does, it allows you to do keyboard shortcuts virtually. So you're not pressing the keyboard shortcut on your keyboard, but you will trigger the keyboard shortcut virtually, and that bypasses a lot of different filters. So let's say this keyboard system, like Kiosk system, has blocked Control Shift Escape, because that would run the task manager. What we can do now is just press Control, then Shift, no keyboard shortcut, and then Escape. So just one after another, and we'll just translate that through the sticky key functions to a keyboard shortcut, bypassing every other thing. And of course we can, like normally, run other tasks from there. This works on a lot of systems, because some people know about sticky keys and they deactivate it, but not a lot of people know that you can do it during boot and break out again. Oh, and I have another demo, quick demo for that. If you somewhat in the login screen, or there's no automatic login, or you have another way to reboot the system that is close to the Windows specific things, there might be a reboot option down here. Yeah, I want to restart anyway. And that can be helpful as well, because what you didn't see when I pressed reboot, I hold down the Shift key. And this is, some of you already probably know, but this does something different with the reboot. This is just normal Windows functionality, but a lot of people miss that. And during the next boot, we get a different options, and then that can really help us to break out. You probably saw this menu. It's just by holding Shift. And one easy thing is just to use a different device, so we can boot from a different device, like in USB flash drive. And that also works if the BIOS is password protected. So we don't know the BIOS, but from here we can choose to boot a different device, because the Windows boot manager will do that. Or another thing, like most Kiosk applications, just start Windows and then start their own application, so that they are protected. But we can go to the advanced options, we can go to startup setting, and we can restart from here. Might take a short time, but this will bring us to the old menu that allows us to safe boot. And the most interesting option here is the number 6, because it will boot the system in a safe mode, but instead of running the default application, that is probably the application that jails us into the Kiosk mode environment, the 6 option says, no, when you've finished booting, the first thing you should do is just running a command line shell. So we can break out from there, possibly. Let's maybe wait a second. I'm not sure how fast the system is. But so we can switch out what is the first application that is started. And maybe from there we can change other settings or do that persistently. Oh man, it's really slow. I'm sorry, it's an older computer. And of course it does that within the same user context. So it's, again, automatic login, but it will spawn me a shell instead of the Kiosk mode application. Maybe I should type it really. But of course you can go from there, and you can have your settings back and try to change the system in whatever way you desire. So the rebooting option can be pretty interesting, or especially if you can, for example, press the Shift key, or even from the login screen. That can help a lot. Some people don't. Like you can press Windows L and they think, oh, that's not dangerous. They just lock the screen. But from there you have the option to reboot, for example. Another thing really close to rebooting is crashing, because that can be helpful as well, of course. If we exhaust all the resources, or if we try to slow down the application running in the foreground, that could be helpful. And quick anecdote I saw there was a system, and I changed the language really rapidly in the system. And changing the language has, like, the whole UI had to be refreshed. And refreshing the UI took so long that when it's running on the UI thread, the program doesn't respond anymore. And you probably all saw, seen this dialogue somewhere in the past. Windows just offers you, like, oh, this application is not responding anymore. Do you want me to close it for you? And you can just press yes, and sometimes you can access the underlying system from there, because the Kiosk mode application is not running anymore. You can influence that by other things. You can sometimes trigger resource exhaustion using other interfaces, for example, network. if you do like SYN flooding or do a lot of TLS negotiation, sometimes there's less RAM available on the system and then can slow the system down, and then again you can do the breakout from there. I had a cool experience with slow resources. That was more or less by accident. It was a medical device that allowed me to export settings to a USB flash drive. And what I did, I was just plugging in. I didn't have like a good USB drive with me, and I wanted to test other things, so I emulated a USB drive using phase tensor. And I had only with me the old phase tensor board, so it emulates more or less a USB drive using USB 1.1. That is really, really slow over a serial connection. And I emulated the device and the Kiosk application, trying to store on that device, trying to find the device, providing with the dialogues to choose which device to store the data on, had so many times spent on talking to that device that Windows again provided me with a dialogue to just shut down the application and access the underlying operating system. And of course, blue screens can also help. If you find a way to trigger a blue screen, really reliable, and especially if you do it multiple times and at the right time. I'm not 100% sure how Windows does that, but if you do it at the right time and some things in the file system breaks, Windows will offer you like repair options, or say, last 5 times the system didn't shut down correctly. Do you want to repair the system? And of course we can go to the advanced boot menu options that we just saw before from there. Might also work by unplugging and plugging in the power. So if we do that 5 times at weird positions, we might also be greeted with the menu that allows us to go in the boot options. And the interesting part about that is when we crash an application, it all depends on what we find there. Some of the times you just crash the main application, there's a fresh Windows under there, you can press everything and everything is there. Sometimes it's not that easy. There's like not even like the Windows Explorer is running, but maybe there's still some leftover CMD running a bash script. I mean, in easy ways, just press Control C and see if the shell is still there, but some of the times there we go. But not all the time that is working, because some of the time it closes really fast. But I actually have done this in a ticketing system for public transport. I mean, I was tasked to do it. I didn't do it myself without being asked to. That would be illegal in Germany, I think. But if you have like a leftover OpenCMD and you cannot enter commands, even the right-click menu on the window itself sometimes have additional options, not only window-related options, but you can, for example, for a CMD, and that, like every demo I show here, also works on Windows 10, because a lot of Kiosk systems, let's be real, are Windows 10 or even Windows 7. So, but you can access the settings from the actual CMD, and from there it's just finding a way, and you can click on a profile, there's an icon chooser, there's a file browse dialog here, and of course we already knew that if we do that from here we can break out again, so we can have a fresh new shell that we actually can put commands in. And there's a somewhat similar way on the CMD for Windows 10. So that can be helpful if we succeed in crashing and have some leftover applications there. Going to the next category is USB. I mean, obvious, you try to plug in a keyboard, because that really helps to have a lot of the keyboard shortcuts then with breaking out, but there are other options. Interesting one I found, it was just plugging in a USB flash drive that has the dirty bit set. This bit is saying that the device was not ejected correctly last time. Maybe you've seen that in the past. So it's a flag that you can actually set it just by a tool. You don't have to unplug it in the wrong way. And if you set the flag, Windows might open, like in a default configuration, Windows will pop up a window and says, oh, this USB flash drive might be damaged. Do you want me to repair it? And first of all, yes, you can repair it. Maybe even the pop-up already helps you to break out. But in the results of the repair, there's a link, and you can start a browser, and then you can go from there again. Colleagues of mine successfully broke out by using BitLocker, also very interesting. So if you use BitLocker to go, that is just Windows' way of saying you encrypt a flash drive with BitLocker. And if you plug that in a Windows system, it will just pop up with a dialog asking for your password. And maybe that also helps you. On Windows 10 and 11, it's not that easy anymore because the dialog does not have any really helpful options there. On a Windows 7, that is really helpful because on the asking password dialog, there's again a link that is starting a browser or the settings, and you can go from there. So it is actually possible to do that from there. Another interesting thing not a lot of people know about is co-driver installation. It is a Windows feature to install additional things alongside the driver, and for some systems it does it fully automatically. We will have a demo at that, maybe that is easier to show, but let's say you have a gaming keyboard, gaming mouse. Of course, like running a keyboard or mouse, that is just default HID drivers, but there can be some additional tool that lets you configure all the beautiful RGB of your gaming keyboard. And if Windows knows about that, it will just download this application and run it. So the user can choose how to install it. We will look at that. And some other ideas when it comes to bypassing USB filters. It could be, I've seen a lot of systems where flash drives are forbidden. You cannot use them. But if you want to exchange data, you can just plug in your Android phone, because blacklisting flash drive is disabling the USB class of mass storage devices. But Android phones, if they are in data exchange mode, they use MTP, the media transfer protocol. It's a completely different USB class, so it bypasses that rule, and then you can exchange data. And of course, sometimes even specific keyboard protocol is forbidden. I saw that on a system that was a Linux system using USB guard, and has a specific rule that USB keyboards are not allowed. So it not only prevents like the USB class of HID devices, but it was specifically forbidding the protocol keyboard. So like USB devices have like class, subclass, and protocol, and it was forbidding keyboards. And what I just did, I emulated a mouse instead of a keyboard because it was not on the blacklist. But my mouse had a full-featured keyboard on that, the emulated mouse. So you can just use the protocol of a mouse, but it's still an HID device, and the report descriptor said, I'm a full-featured keyboard, I have every key. And so you can bypass the filter and then again use the mouse to press any keyboard shortcut you like and break out from there. We will do a quick demo of the co-driver install. I brought a video for me that it would take too long probably with this one here. So this is a Windows system. And on the side, like this is a VM, and on the side I was just emulating a keyboard using the Synthion and the Face Dancer framework. You can do it even with a Flipper Zero or something like that. You just have to emulate the product and vendor ID, because that is how Windows tries to find different drivers. And Windows already got the keyboard driver. It's a gaming keyboard. Maybe you see in the lower corner that is like the virtual box saying there's network traffic. What Windows does here in the background is actually search the internet for code drivers. And for this particular gaming keyboard, it knows a code driver and just downloads and runs the application. And sometimes you can, like, depending on what application it downloads, you can have a link in there already and break out. In the past, it did really good, or like really work well with Razer devices, because the Synaptics installer allowed a lot of different things. Quite lately, I wasn't able to do it anymore, but it does work on SteelSeries as well. Unfortunate part is that you have to here to download. Let me skip the download part. At some point, we will see the download is ready. And we can start the install, and in that case, really helpful. The UNC triggers in, and again, look out for links. We find some links, so we press on links, and the links brings us to the UAC settings, and there's another link, and again, it will open the browser. Interesting on Bing or other searches, there's just upload a picture and search by picture. That also has like a file open dialog, and you can go from there. So plugging in some gaming devices is actually a viable way to bypass Kiosk systems. That works. I mean, of course, they have to have internet. Not all of them have, but that can be helpful. really short network. I wanted to include the network section because it is important you look at the network side if you can access the network of the device. But I'm sorry, I don't have like ready to use tips or tricks for that here, because it highly depends on what service is available. Maybe you find like a share folder that you can just upload data to, and that helps you. But you basically do a port scan and try to figure out your way from there. Another little category is Android, because some kiosk systems really like to use Android. It's even easier to make a kiosk system with Android. So interesting things to look out here just in general is for the Android debugging bridge. Check if you can access the system that way, do it in different ways. It can be network USB, try the recovery mode, try to plug in a keyboard as well. There are keyboard shortcuts for that, and check other other interfaces that are pretty common on devices. And like at the end, a category I don't know where to put exactly is just general stuff. NFC can be interesting, because NFC, if it automatically processes NDEF messages, it can help you with breaking out. I have a quick demo for that as well. And Bluetooth can be helpful. Sometimes you can even force pair a keyboard without opening a dialog, and it can help you break out as well. Barcode scanners, just a quick mention of that. A lot of barcode scanners are just emulating a USB keyboard, and whatever code you scan in, they type in. So you can reprogram them to allow keyboard shortcuts, and you can reprogram them using barcodes. That is really helpful. So you can enable all the features on a barcode scanner to do that, and then you can break out from there. Other interesting thing is URI handlers. I have a quick demo about them. Let me quickly, maybe. No, sorry, don't want this. So this is just an Android phone. This is an NFC tag. On this tag, there is an NDEF record. There's an NDEF record stored down here. It's a record saying COM Android settings. And if you have like a normal Android and you just put in the tag behind of that, it will automatically run that application just by default and not asking any question or whatsoever. And we're in the settings and can change the menu. So that is something you can do with NDEF records on Android systems at least. And I think I have still another quick demo. Oh, URI handlers, let us quickly look into that. Breakout lines, something like this. Because if you have a browser, there are a lot of options to break out, and here are some of them. So this is just the email handler, like mail to, and if you put mail to, it will open the default mailing program. That can help if you can access a website like this. You can even run applications from links. At least some of them, Windows has features for that. And of course you can break out from the calculator settings, but you don't have to make it as hard as that. You can just open the Windows settings in general from a link. That can be really helpful. And of course, sometimes there's no protocol attached. So this is like calling people, and if no protocol attached, that's even easier. You can choose whatever application you want to handle this. And of course, you can do like the opening dialog and go from there again. So much for file handlers. So let's recap. I'm running out of time. So they're endless way. Hopefully I demonstrated that. There's no one way to rule them all, so be creative, and it all depends on what you actually have available. So the lessons learned from a blue team perspective is just don't build your own kiosk mode environment on top of full-featured systems. It is like really hard to blacklist everything and don't miss anything. Do the other way around, like build your own system and only include the features that you really need. I've seen people do that, and like this is really hard. If there's no X server running on a Linux system, no desktop environment, like keyboard shortcuts, what keyboard shortcuts are still left? I mean, some of them still are, but it's really, really limited. There are no drivers that you can access, no USB support stuff, so that can be helpful. And of course, all input is evil, so validate everything. If you can click on something you're not supposed to click on, that can break it. And hiding stuff is not a good security feature. Just use strong authentication if you want to have some administrative breakout system. And don't reinvent the wheel, because there are a lot of Kiosk systems already. Like even Windows have a keyboard filter mechanism. At least you can filter parts of that. And it's built-in software. Just use that. And from a red team perspective, of course, know what you're doing, do your research, check all the interfaces, be creative. It is all about being creative with Kiosk systems, and be persistent, because sometimes it's, you tried the first thing and I think, oh, no keyboard shortcut is working. Try more, try different ones, try different approaches. With that, I'm coming to an end. There's way more different applications, and hopefully I did it correctly, but it should be online by now. The slides are there, and I did a full write-up on, you find way more keyboard shortcuts, ideas for different systems in here, ideas how to reproduce them, links for the resources, tools, shopping list for weird USB adapters that can help you. So a lot of there is in there. And I only think we have a short time for questions and answers. Oh, we have time? Okay, that is lovely, perfect, because I really would have some, I would really enjoy if some of you have, I mean, of course, question that also, but share your own story about, maybe you saw an approach to break a system that wasn't in here. So I really would like that. That is why the contribution is welcome is coming from here. So share your story, maybe even do a pull request or something, so that we can increase the collection of tips and tricks, ideas to help other people to be creative when attacking Kiosk mode environments and securing them. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, so my question is that based on your experience, how applicable are these attacks against point-of-sale terminals?
Yeah, interesting question. We did some points-of-sale terminals, and most of the time it comes down to what vectors are available. For some of them, breaking out from the UI just by using touch was not that easy, or sometimes we didn't even manage to do it. But if you include other vectors, for example, if you have a point-of-sales terminal that is a self-checkout system, a lot of times, there is personnel there, but they don't know what you're doing when you're standing in front of a device like this. And a lot of times there's just a USB on the back side, or it just can pop up something at the side, like supermarket scales for weighing different products, something like this. Sometimes there's just USB on there. And if you have USB, I don't think, especially when it's running Windows underneath, I don't think we encountered any time that we were not able to break out. So a colleague of mine has the rule, if it's running Linux, Windows underneath, and you can plug in USB devices, there's no way you can secure it. And so far I have to prove him wrong, because so far I was able to manage to break out every single time when this much attack surface is available.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Thanks. Have you this is on? Oh. Have you messed around with the LinkedIn keyboard shortcut that's baked in? Because my understanding is that's not something that you can even turn off in the registry, which I would think would be scary as a red teamer, but probably fucking awesome for you.
Yeah. So the question was about the LinkedIn keyboard, LinkedIn key. So yeah, there are a lot of different keys. Somewhere on some keyboards, like modern Windows laptops, come with a Windows Copilot key, and that can also help. I mean, sometimes it's just emulating another keyboard shortcut. I think that is true for the LinkedIn key as well, but I'm not 100% sure. But yes, try every weird key, because some of the times it is in the documentation, like in the GitHub repository, but I wasn't able to show it here. So a lot of the times you can just plug in a normal keyboard, because a normal modern keyboard has keys for opening a calculator, there's a key for opening a browser, there's the media keys for next song, previous song, increase volume, all these different keys that are, when people implement this, might skip and not think about, they can really help. So the LinkedIn key probably worked the same way. I'm pretty sure maybe it's just a key to open the browser with some defaults. And when it comes to defending, I'm sorry, I'm not really good into that part, so I don't know all the Windows settings. Like we saw the 5x shift during boot. I'm not even sure how you disable the sticky key functions before login. Maybe there is an option. Maybe you just have to delete the executable that is responsible for that dialog. But I have no idea. I'm not that deep into Windows system, but interesting idea. Yeah, LinkedIn key. Have to try that.
Yeah, I was very lucky to do some testing in retail environments this year, sanction testing. And one of the things that I found is that they had PIN codes to get into like the management of the kiosk apps, but they weren't using admin or 1234 or whatever. Instead, they were using store IDs. And these are internal things. So how do you find them? Well, larger chains often have a Find My Store API. And you can just query that, and it will just give you all the fields from the store's record, including the code to use, because it's just a store ID. And it's really easy to just figure that out.
That's cool, yeah. That is really interesting. I mean, a lot of people tend to use passwords that are somewhat linked to something if it's not the default. But yeah, that's a good contribution, yeah. Thinking about store IDs and how to get them in something that is just requiring pins. Yeah. Cool, thank you for sharing.
Thanks. I have a question regarding barcodes, 2D barcodes at point of sales. So you often see personnel, retail store personnel, having like their badge around the neck, and then you getting, they have some magic codes, right?
Yep.
How would you go about to find out what these special codes are?
I've never actually come around to try to brute force them yet. I'm not sure if that is very viable. I mean, you can do it. They are like Android applications. You just can produce barcodes on your phone with a simple click. And I'm pretty sure, like there are libraries, you can do it on your laptop as well, and just present one barcode after another every second and find out if there's something that helps you break out. But other than that, I think because it's a black box, I mean, maybe you know something about the system. I'm not really familiar with what software is installed on what points of sale system and who builds that, but maybe I'm pretty sure there's a method to the madness, and maybe it even is like manufacturer specific, so that the company that is doing the points of sale system has, maybe even you can use the same code at different stores or something like this. Really interesting approach. I have to look into that closer, like just use the magic code, because it's the same with keyboard shortcuts. If you know, then it's easy, but you have to try or find some way to get the knowledge to actually try it, or brute force it, of course. Yeah, interesting idea, thank you.
An addition for Android stuff, it's a bit of an older trick, but Android 6 and I think up to 7 is still vulnerable to navigation stack overflow. So if you can get into, let's say, settings, which if you get a keyboard, I found you can always, by just holding down the comma key, you get to the language switcher, get to input method switching, whatever, you get into the settings, and then you just like basically stack so many navigation frames on top of each other that it just loses the bottom, and at some point the back key just shows up. You press back, you're on the front page of settings. I've done this on point-of-sale terminals that were like PCI compliant. So this is still definitely a trick that is out there.
Okay, cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that is interesting, though. I didn't know about overflowing them, but yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know about, even like with the website, URI handlers can be really helpful on Android as well. If you manage to best them, like if you have a contact, it will just run the contact application, and you maybe break out from there or do other stuff. But like overflowing, that's interesting. Cool. Thanks for sharing.
One question. I'm wondering if any kiosk system was, how should I say, honeypotted, as in have a misleading escape mechanism which would flag to the system administrator.
That's an interesting question. No, so far I didn't come across some of these, but that would be really annoying because it would waste a lot of time for me, because it's a black box, to be fair, and most of the time it's a black box. So if there are stuff in there that tries to mislead me, yeah, that would really throw me off. But so far, never saw that. No. Interesting approach. I mean, hopefully not the best approach, real security is just fixing it and not wasting my time, but interesting approach. Let's see if that comes in the future.
Unfortunately, we have no more time for questions. Thank you all for coming, and let's give a round of applause for IKARUS.